this. I need a drink before we go any further. Stupid fucking bullshit. Can't believe they're gonna fucking... Fuck it! Okay, let's do it. Let's talk about the worst metal albums of 2020. Unlike my best albums of the year list, I don't really have any honorable mentions per se. However, there is one additional album I would like to talk about on top of my official top 5 worst albums of the year. That album being the Clayman 2020 EP from In Flames. What in theory should have been an attempt to celebrate one of the most iconic records in the history of melodic death metal very quickly turned into an active attempt by In Flames to sabotage themselves, to rub salt in the wounds left open by In Flames' most recent material. As the EP goes out of its way to update a few select tracks from the original Clayman with a modern paint job and perspective. The result is pretty bad, even by the standards of modern In Flames, a band that, as far as I'm concerned, has been consistently responsible for some of the worst metal of the last decade. What was once so sharp, so potent, so full of spirit and energy now feels dull, synthetic, disingenuous, it feels hollow. It's just a genuinely depressing listen. The only reason why this isn't on the final list itself, officially speaking, is because, officially speaking, it's an EP, not an album. Had Clayman 2020 been a full-blown re-recording of the original Clayman record, maybe I would have been compelled to throw this on there. But, as it stands, it isn't. So, I don't know, let's call this an honorable mention, I guess. A thing. It exists. It's crap. Let's move on, because we got 5 other records to talk about, and they're all equally fucking terrible. With that in mind, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it, and let's start with Grandpa Metal from Brian Posehn, released February 14th via Megaforce Records. I can very honestly say that there is no other album in 2020 in any genre that irritated and annoyed me the way that Grandpa Metal did. Like some kind of disease that I just couldn't get rid of and I had to live with for like an extended period of time. Or like some kind of flesh-eating symbiotic parasite that dug its way under my skin and I just couldn't pick it out for the life of me. Over the course of 14 tracks, Grandpa Metal consistently subjects you to some of the most juvenile and cringe-worthy, boomer-friendly humor I have ever heard. Pandering to metal elitists who can't handle the concept that there is indeed other music out there other than metal. Pandering to boomers who just can't seem to accept the fact that they aren't young and hot anymore. And pandering to the lowest common denominator of consumer with consistently childish bullshit. Quite literally childish bullshit. All the while Brian drags along a star-studded cast that includes members of Anthrax, Testament, Dream Theater, Guns N' Roses, Machine Head, the Grammy award-winning Weird Al, Fall Out Boy's Patrick Stump, Kim Thayil from Soundgarden, the late Jill Janis in her last known recorded performance. Oh my god. It is so painfully irritating and repetitive. I don't think there's a single joke on this album that doesn't boil down to one of 3 things. 1. Brian Posehn is fat and has a greasy dick and he's old. 2. Brian Posehn does not like modern pop music. Why? Because modern pop music is bad. Cardi B is bad, Justin Bieber is bad, Bruno Mars is bad. Everything that isn't metal is bad. And the 3rd joke, farts. Literally just farts. Farts, 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 farts. And the killer is when all these Brian Posehn fanboys rushed to this album's defense, they really didn't have anything to say other than, "It's just a joke, bro! Come on, get off your high horse! Farts are funny!" The idea that I should cut this album slack because it's a comedy album is fucking ridiculous, especially when it's not funny. Call me crazy, but Brian Posehn bragging about how much of a fat fucking pig he is and complaining about modern pop music is not especially funny. If for whatever reason the concept of listening to a middle-aged metal elitist rant about how bad his farts fucking smell for like 50 minutes sounds good to you, maybe this is for you. Maybe this is the album you've been waiting for your entire fucking life. But I fucking hate this thing, and I'm not gonna pretend otherwise just because it's a comedy record. Don't take it so seriously. Nah, fuck that, and fuck you. Next up, we have Danzig Sings Elvis from Danzig, released April 17th via Cleopatra Records. Look, I am dead certain that at some point in history, Danzig Sings Elvis was intended and envisioned to be a well-crafted and loving tribute to Elvis Presley, a rock and roll pioneer and icon, and an idol of Glenn Danzig. But unfortunately, what you may have intended, what you may have envisioned, does not matter, because what was executed is laughably terrible. Remarkably terrible. Hands down, one of the most fascinatingly poorly produced and executed records I have seen this year. And I don't really feel like that's hyperbole. I feel like it's very clear as day just how utterly awful this album is in every single aspect. Sonically, musically, conceptually. The performances are so sloppy, so lazy. The band fumbling through some of the most generic 50s rock arrangements I have ever heard with no energy, no enthusiasm whatsoever, hindered by a sound mix that intentionally pushes them as far back as possible. Like seriously, I have heard karaoke backing tracks with better production and sound quality. Danzig sounds like he is drunkenly sleepwalking through the entire record and at times isn't capable of doing even the bare minimum. He quite clearly has trouble hitting and maintaining a lot of notes on this record. He fumbles choruses and melodies regularly and just genuinely sounds so tired and so completely zoned out of it. He sounds like a really bad Elvis impersonator who just downed an entire bottle of fucking NyQuil. And the track list is so fucking lethargic and repetitive. I mean, my god, there are so many slow and monotonous, droning 50s rock ballads on this thing. As a result of all of this, the album has no impact. It feels so underwhelming. I want to say boring, but I feel like boring is too kind of a word. It is a literal snooze fest. This feels like the kind of music I would find emanating out of a funeral home. And it honestly does such a disservice to an entertainer and a performer like Elvis Presley. Like, there is not a single song on this record that was not performed and produced better by Elvis nearly 60 fucking years ago. Not only is this a terrible album, not only is this one of the worst albums of the year, it is one of the worst things that Danzig has ever created. And I feel that it does to Elvis Presley's music and legacy what Doug Walker did to Pink Floyd's music and legacy on Nostalgia Critic's The Wall. Next up, we have Shadow Work from Trapt, released June 19th via the Label Group. Let's all be totally fucking honest with ourselves here. In a normal year, Trapt wouldn't even be on our fucking radar. But 2020 isn't a normal year. So, here we are. This album doesn't feel like an album. It feels like a product. It feels like a creation, designed in a lab, scientifically engineered with the intent of being the biggest, most commercially successful and appealing rock album ever. It repeats a lot of generic song structures and songwriting tropes found often within mainstream pop and commercial rock music. The lyrics are left intentionally very vague and simple so as to appeal to the widest amount of people possible. And there's just nothing especially challenging about any one moment of this album. It is paint by numbers. It is cookie cutter white people American rock music. It's like if the Black Album was remade specifically for white suburban families. With that in mind, it often feels as if the album is pandering to middle America and the most mainstream rock listener. If this album could speak, I am absolutely certain that it would say, "Hello, fellow Republicans. Do you like rock music but you're scared by bands like Godsmack and Five Finger Death Punch? Then why not give Trapt a try?" It is diet hard rock music. It is vanilla rock music. It is so tame, so soft, and so desperate to be so commercially appealing. At no point on this album do I ever feel as if the intention was to make really engaging and entertaining rock music. Instead, I feel as if the intention was, we need to sell as many copies of this album as possible. And it makes for such a dreadful experience. I mean, when this thing came out, I initially dismissed it as just being boring, and I still stand by that. It's very boring, but it's also very fake and shallow and cold and manipulative. Yeah, I'm sure the Trapt loyalists will tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I only hate this record because I disagree with Chris Taylor Brown politically, and therefore I'm just trying to shit on this record. Which I am, but not because I disagree with Chris Taylor Brown, but rather because he made a shit fucking record. A transparently and obviously shit fucking record. Next up, Torch the Faith, the debut album from Psychosexual, released July 31st, via Sex Records. Jesus Christ, where do I even fucking begin with this one? This whole thing is like the weird mutant incel freak child of Hot Topic, Marilyn Manson, Evanescence. It's so edgy and provocative and hypersexual to the point of being really uncomfortable. They're trying so hard to project this really kinky, lustful, hopeless romantic presentation that it just backfires ferociously. It is initially corny, consistently pretentious, but as the album goes on and on and on, the lyrics start to become more and more dangerous, more and more questionable, as the band starts singing less about how sexy they think they are, and more about how they want to stalk women, and rape women, and mentally and physically torture women, and murder them, and then marry and rape their dead bodies until literally the end of time. They start talking about how they literally can't live without these women, and that these women need to be with them no matter what they say. They don't have a choice in the matter. It's just really awkward and uncomfortable. It's genuinely hard to believe that married men with families wrote this material. Don't get me wrong, I'm well aware that metal has never been an especially PC genre, and despite its more progressive turns in recent years, probably never will be. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm down to hear about how these grown men fantasize about raping, murdering, and torturing women over extended periods of time. That's let's all just be totally honest, that's really fucked up. Maybe this would work better if there was a little bit more to it, but what you're really dealing with are these very formulaic pop song structures with huge industrial riffs and some really weird gothic keyboards and choirs and some really terrible lead vocals from the devil daddy figure. Perhaps realizing just how little of substance their music is, the band go out of their way to rip off pre-existing material from some other artists. Take, for instance, the track Let the Sin Begin, which is dangerously similar to David Bowie's I'm Afraid of Americans, which in and of itself is... That's more offensive than anything lyrically happening on this album. Like, how fucking dare you, Psychosexual? Yeah, this is just a really gross and cringeworthy mess. But I gotta say, I'm happy to see that a lot of you already agree on this. Like, this is the only album we're talking about in this video that nobody rushed to the defense of when I put my initial review up. Like, people rushed to the defense of Brian Posehn, people rushed to the defense of Danzig, people rushed to the defense of Trapt. Nobody came to the defense of Psychosexual. Fucking nobody. Everyone in the world saw this for exactly what it was. Everybody in the world saw this for the fucking diet Marilyn Manson five-finger death punch Slipknot buffoonery that it so clearly was. Personally, I think all these albums are equally fucking shit. But I think for that reason alone, Psychosexual easily claims the shit-covered crown for worst album of the year. And finally, this brings us to Nightmares of the Decomposed from 6 Feet Under, released October 2nd via Metal Blade Records. Look, at this point, 6 Feet Under has become synonymous with making genuinely shit, mediocre at absolute fucking best death metal. Consistently lazy, consistently generic, consistently poorly written, arranged, and performed, regardless of whatever star power is brought into the fold of 6 Feet Under, resulting in some of the worst death metal ever made. Their last two studio albums, Torment and Graveyard Classics 4, in particular, being the worst albums released in their respective years, in my opinion at least. And yet, despite that knowledge, I can't help but be somewhat shocked by how utterly atrocious Nightmares of the Decomposed is. Like, this album is so bad, it's jarring. It's revolutionary in how utterly fucking awful it is. Cooked and served so ignorantly, so clumsily by Chris Barnes, a gentleman who frankly lost his edge a long time ago and we're only now figuring that out. And he really is the big issue here, folks. I mean, we could sit here and talk about how tired and droll the music is. We could sit here and talk about how generic it is. We could sit here and talk about how there are literally teenagers producing better death metal demos than this studio album released on a major fucking label. But instead, I'd like to focus specifically on Chris fucking Barnes, because he is the face of 6 Feet Under, the voice of 6 Feet Under, the main figure, the person in charge, and he is easily the worst fucking thing about this. The dude sounds fucking awful. He consistently grunts in this very monotonous tone. He sounds like a dog choking on a bone.
This is literally how he sings across the album. He just does this for like 40 minutes.
I could probably call my sick mother on the phone right now and ask her to re-record every single vocal on this album. And you know what? I believe with all my fucking heart she would put in an objectively better performance on every fucking song. Chris Barnes might have been a death metal legend back in 1990, but the harsh reality is that in 2020, there are literally teenagers performing in their basements, creating significantly more original and entertaining music than any 1 second of Nightmares of the Decomposed. And if you don't believe me, do yourself a favor and spend 1 fucking minute on Bandcamp. Literally 1. You can time it if you like. I promise you, you will find something objectively better in under a minute. Oh, it's over. It's finally fucking over. I need another fucking drink. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think is the worst album of the year, or feel free to try and defend these records if you can. Many have already tried, and they've all failed as far as I'm concerned, but I don't know, give it a shot. Go ahead and waste your fucking time. See if I care. Press this button right here for updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. Fuck all of these albums. You, on the other hand, have yourself a fantastic fucking day.